Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios, welcome to this evening's episode of The Watchdog. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. Here's what we have in store for you this evening. The IFP tells us why they have gone back on their word and are now ready to sleep with the enemy. And down in Nelson Mandela Bay, DA mayoral candidate Nqaba Bhanga would have been getting ready to go on to bed with a mayoral chain around his neck this evening if it was for a legal loophole that means the ANC gets to fight another day. We speak to the man who would be king. Well, the IFP announced today that it had reached agreements with the ANC about coalitions. Here's an insert.
Let me be upfront. Where we will govern as a leading party in KwaZulu-Natal, we will not enter into a coalition with the ANC. This is for simple reason. The ANC has not been honest with us in the past. They have let down the people of South Africa, and the voters clearly express themselves when it comes to the ANC.
Barely weeks after the IFP president made this announcement, the IFP has made an about 10. Party leaders were vehemently against any deal with the ANC, but they've changed their tune, instead opting to enter into a working relationship with the ANC in hung municipalities. This to help each other gain control in councils where each party has the majority. The IFP managed to retain 13 councils after the local government elections in the province. With the new coalition agreement in place, the IFP will control 24 of the 54 councils.
We have come to a broad understanding that where the IFP has the most seats, despite no outright majority, the IFP will form the municipal government. Reciprocally, where the ANC has the most seats, despite no outright majority, the ANC will form the municipal government. Neither party will interfere in this process and will support the principle of the two largest parties becoming the government.
The IFP says the decision to work with the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal was ratified by the National Council. SABC says part of the reason the IFP decided to work with the ANC was due to unreasonable demands made by smaller political parties.
Some political parties appeared to see themselves as kingmakers and felt entitled to make difficult demands. Some wanted the mayoral chain, others wanted to be the speaker. At a fundamental level, this will be a manipulation of democracy.
The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal says the coalition talks were handled by the ruling party's national leaders. ANC spokesperson in KwaZulu-Natal, Nqaba Bhanga, says the movement will only comment once it has seen the report of the coalition talks. Tulani Msimanga, SABC News, Durban.
Well, joining us now is the IFP's Treasurer General Martin Singh. Mr. Singh, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. A week, I suppose, is a very long time in politics indeed. From telling us no ways, you're not going to, there's no way you're going to go into any coalition arrangement with the ANC, to having many.
Yes, good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to the viewers, and thank you for the opportunity. Yes, a week is a long time in politics, but if that week is a week that allowed people to consider all proposals on the table and come up with an informed decision like our National Council had done, then I think, you know, the main thing is that it was a very, very considered decision that we took and that was announced today by our president.
But I mean, when he spoke last week, he didn't talk about proposals. You know, he didn't care. I mean, that's what, well, one could deduce from what he was saying. He didn't care about propositions or, you know, deals or anything like that. He argued that as a matter of principle, you know, it wasn't going to happen. And look where we are today.
Yes, no, Vuyo, you're quite correct. You're quite correct. There was an announcement made last week with the information that was on the table. Since last week, we as a party, a team of negotiators, have been talking to at least 17 other political parties who came up with different demands or requests that would allow one to form governments in the different municipalities. We've always said, and the president has always said, that the ANC have been rejected by and large by the voters, and this is why they did not get the majority that they hoped for. And that as the IFP, we would make sure that that rejection by the voters would be to the advantage of the IFP. We've now realized, after looking at all the options that were available to us, that the main thing for South Africa and KwaZulu-Natal in particular is to ensure that stable municipalities, municipalities get elected with stable governments. And from what we saw, it was not going to be possible with any other pathway to have stable governments. But what we want to emphasize that we are still in opposition to the ANC. Working with the ANC and respecting the wishes of the people in the way we did, where the majority party would be allowed to put a government wherever they are. We would be allowed to put a government wherever we are, although we would not have 50% plus one, actually is what the electorate had said to South Africa. We are not giving any party outright majorities in 66 municipalities. Go and find a way to work with each other. And for us as a National Council, this is the way we can ensure service delivery to the people of South Africa and KwaZulu-Natal in particular.
If that is the case, especially your latter point, if that is indeed the case and what you truly believe, on what basis then was Mr. Hlabisa saying, as he did in that package that we just played, that those who were asking for mayoral change or asking to be speaker and whatever other demands that the people you are speaking to may have had were engaging in a manipulation of process? It cannot be when, you know, you have hung municipalities, which plainly and simply means that you didn't get an outright majority. Hence, you have now entered into coalitions, including with the ANC. Surprise, surprise. Okay, unmute yourself, please. Oh, I don't know what, something happened there. We've lost your sound, Mr. Singh. Okay, we're going to try and re-establish that line with Narendra Singh. Narendra Singh is the treasurer of the IFP, and we're trying to really understand how they got to go back on their word. Only a few days ago, hardly a week ago, they said they would never work with the ANC. And today, surprise, surprise, they made the announcement that they are indeed going to work with the ANC, supported to get the majority and to be able to approve things where they can. And the ANC will do the same in areas where the ANC finds itself in a similar situation. So the question I was asking Mr. Singh was, on what basis you were saying other people are manipulating the process, when in fact you yourselves are actually engaged in what other people would call a subversion, of the will of the people. Okay, we're strong. Please unmute yourself if you can. Let's try that. Try unmuting yourself.
Yes, there's load shedding, and it's impacting seriously on networks in the area where I come from. So I'm sorry, but firstly, words like manipulating what the voters wanted. I mean, the voters have said, we want certain parties to rule outright in municipalities. In others, we are saying to political parties, come together and find the best way forward. And I don't think other parties manipulated us, and I think that's not the right word to use.
Well, it's the word. It's a word. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a word your president used. In case you didn't hear or listen to the clip we just played, it's not my word. I didn't come up with it.
Yeah. Okay. Even if we use the word manipulation, I mean, when let's look at a Tegwini, for example. You got 24 political parties. No one party has got an outright majority. What do you do there? I mean, what do you do? Do you have a Nelson Mandela Bay situation? Do you have situations like in other parts of the country where these talks collapse and you don't have governments in place? And when you don't have governments in place, who is the one that suffers? Is the people on the ground. Because people expect delivery. People expect governments to be formed. People expect that whoever is there are responsible enough to know what the needs of the people are and will deliver on those particular needs. And we can't allow courts to determine what's going to happen, the outcome of local government. The people have given us their views, and we must go by what the people have said. Yes, the best arrangement that we could find, it's not a perfect arrangement. I mean, nothing is ever perfect, even in life, even if you're married or whatever, nothing is perfect. But the best arrangement to ensure stability in the formation of these local governments is for us to work with the ANC and give them the opportunity to form governments where they are in the majority, and we will do the same where we are in the majority in hung municipalities, respecting each other, working with mutual respect, putting common issues on the table, working on budget issues, so you don't have stalemates and people get compromised in terms of what they want. Basic delivery of services. And, we could have gone with anybody else, and then the media would have said, but why would so-and-so, and why would so-and-so, and why would so-and-so? Leaders have to take a decision. And this we believe, or the National Council has believed, is the right thing to do. It's something new and unique for South Africa, but it's not something uncommon in other democracies around the world. So we don't see the big hoo-ha about it, but we would like South Africans to appreciate and realize that, what we are trying to do is in the best interests of those people that we are meant to serve, without looking at positions for each other and without a one-member party trying to manipulate the outcome of who should be in government.
It's interesting. I remember when I first heard it as I was listening, where your president, Mr. Thabisa, was saying, where we will be in charge, they'll leave us alone, and where they are in charge, we'll leave them alone, but we'll be in opposition, and vice versa. It sounds like scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Did you discuss any parameters? In other words, where does that start and where does it end? Are there guidelines about what each of you can or can't do, depending obviously on whatever party will be in power and which one will be in opposition?
It's certainly not the case of you scratch my back and I scratch yours. It's a case of forming stable governments, and I think our president has made it absolutely clear that where the ANC are the government, the IFP will be in opposition. We will endeavor to get chairpersonships of the Municipal Public Accounts Committee to hold that council to expenditure, wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure, etc. And where we need to oppose whatever is put forward by the executive, we will do so. So it's not a question of us, agreeing to what each other is going to say and do. But obviously, in terms of our agreement, we will try and find each other to make sure that the people do not suffer as a result of us coming together. And there are going to be differences, but differences that will have to be ironed out through conflict resolution mechanisms, passing of budgets, etc.
Okay, that line's frozen again, but we're going to leave it there now. Martin Singh, who is the treasurer of Inkatha Freedom Party, on the back, of course, of the decision they announced today that they'll be entering into coalitions with the ANC party they had said only last week they would never go to bed with. The Nelson Mandela Bay councillors who were elected on the 1st of November met today with the aim of electing a new mayor, a speaker, inaugurate councillors, but all of that was postponed today. That coming on the back of a letter from Kokta MEC, Xolile Nqata, questioning the authority of the acting city manager, Nqaba, to call the meeting as his acting period had actually expired in October. Listen to Nqaba, the acting mayor, talking councillors through a decision that he took earlier today on the back of some legal advice he said he got.
Councillors, in closing, I had indicated that the meeting will be cancelled. The meeting will be held on Monday at 10, starting with the swearing in of councillors, followed by then the election of the speaker and so on. I've indicated that we'll work together closely with Kokta to ensure that everything is above board, and that's how we'll proceed with the matters, councillors. Thank you very much for your indulgence. The meeting is closed.
The meeting that never was. Well, let's speak now to the man who would be king, and that's former Mayor Nqaba Bhanga, who is, of course, the DA's mayoral candidate in Nelson Mandela Bay. It was interesting, Mr. Bhanga, when you stood up and said the position that Nqaba, the acting mayor, held was a correct one, but of course you couldn't get the meeting to go ahead, and in fact he was the first person to prevent that from happening. I just want first your own take on what actually happened. How, one, did the acting city manager get to adopt a position that he himself said, actually was a wrong one?
The city manager, remember, what he said in the meeting was that his decision to cancel the meeting, he sought a legal advice that there was not a single administrative error in convening the meeting legally. But for strategic reasons and building relations with the province, he felt that it could bring a stable meeting if he allows that they get involved, which there were no legal basis.
But strategic reasons have no status in law.
Pardon me?
Strategic reasons have no status in law.
Exactly, there's nothing called strategic reasons, but it was just an interference from the provincial government who allowed a notice to go out for 7 days at 10 o'clock in the evening, issue a letter to say the meeting must continue. The reason behind that is that the ANC had no numbers. Not only that they did not have numbers, they have not finalized their process of a mayoral candidate. Therefore, they wanted to stop this meeting to proceed because there was nobody for them to put up. which is total interference and also not allowing democratic processes to unfold. And unfortunately, the acting city manager felt that it would be strategic to postpone it for a few days, in which we challenged, and we have no authority because the majority of councillors wanted the meeting to proceed. But if there's no presiding officer, this meeting could have been challenged in court. What the people of Nelson Mandela wants is that a mayor and the executive must be elected in order for those who are elected, those who win, are able to run a stable city. That's what people want here. But there are people who do not understand that if something does not go their way, they can do anything to make sure that they bring instability. It's because it's the nature of liberation movement. When things don't favor them, they break everything in front of them.
Did you, albeit reluctantly, perhaps, or shall I say, grudgingly, then in the end support the position of the, I'm deducing this from what you have just said, support the position of the acting city manager?
Legally, the city manager's position have no legal grounds. It's unfortunately in South Africa that you have an impartial provincial government. As we have seen in Tswane, when it does not fit the ANC, they use the provincial structures to try and enforce illegal ways. What happened today was illegal. But because we are Democrats, Monday is going to come. And what we want is that there must be an election in order for the business of council to continue and the services for the people to be delivered. It's not about who wins. It's about us complying with the laws of the Republic and make sure that what is right, it's done. It's unfortunate we are getting used to this, that when liberation movements start to lose power, they do everything to try and break the same constitution that they fought for. And this is what is happening in Nelson Mandela. This is just the beginning we're going to see in South Africa. We've seen it in Umungeni, where a majority government is elected, but they don't want a meeting of council. Therefore, this is going to be a norm. That's why we must do everything into our power and expose it when it's happened.
Okay, let's go beyond what happened today. I'm keen to know what you have been doing in Nelson Mandela Bay, that which your party has been finding it difficult to do elsewhere, in Johannesburg, in Tswane. What has enabled you there to be able to coalesce with the small parties you've been able, it would seem, to win over?
What we're doing is that we are saying there must be a council, and all parties, I think all parties in Nelson Mandela, they are saying there must be a council to elect the leadership. Whoever wins runs the city. What we do not want is that the intention to put this city again under administration. There's been instability for the past years in this city. We're faced with a water crisis. Our underground infrastructure needs maintenance. Our people are unemployed. And our priority is make sure that there is a leadership of the city to guide the city for the next 5 years, wherever it comes from. And all these parties that you've seen being listed on social media as you speak were parties who were saying this meeting must continue. We are not going to allow to go to administration. We are prepared to have conversations. And conversations should be about people and should not be about positions. There's no coalition that has been established in Nelson Mandela, but there's been consensus of agreements to say a council meeting must proceed and we must be able to be given our opportunity to elect the leaders of our choice And I think that South Africans at least are supposed to be dealing with these issues going forward. But it's a difficult situation, a very messy situation in all over South Africa, including in Nelson Mandela in particular, where you need 13 additional people to support you, both in the ANC and also in the DA. And it's not going to be easy to manage, but I think those who will be able to form coalitions, they have to spend more time of patience and listening and taking the interest of the people forward, or these cities are just going to collapse. And who are going to be victims are the residents and the citizens. And I'm happy that we've been able to put that through, working with progressive individuals to say, now this local government have taught us a lesson that this is the time for the people, and we should be at least take the interest of the people as a priority in order to make sure that what happened the past 5 years, the killings, the instability, the infighting, which affected seriously, do not happen again. I think that's my interest and the interest of the DA and the interest of many other parties who've been involved in these informal conversations.
Very quickly, Mr. Bhanga, how worried are you that over the next few days leading up to that critical or crucial meeting on Monday, the ANC may just outstage you and, convince, some of the people who are with you or parties that are with you now to change their minds?
Politics about choices. At the end of the day, the choices we take are choices that will be answerable about in the next 5 years. It is not only that day when you vote and you get to celebrate. It's a long 5 years where you have to do actually the work of changing people's lives and also running stable cities. And people should understand that it's not easy to run cities. It's not about excitement. Whoever wins on Monday, whether people change or not change, must understand that the task ahead for Nelson Mandela is serious. We might face a dry December. We have a water crisis. We might be close to day zero. Our infrastructure is collapsing. We need to build a city and build a city's economy. We need to make sure that we bring back confidence of business to come and invest here. That's what will be expected, and people will be judged on the basis of their ability to create a functioning local state, and not on the basis of excitement and also forcing unstable government. We're not going to get into an unstable government because it's risky, not only for the DA, but for the people. What is unstable in this city is going to be chaos. And the two of us, we will be here and we'll be watching it. We're doing everything ourselves to follow a democratic process. We'll put a candidate as a DA, whether we have the numbers or not, to affirm a democratic process that we have contested in this election. If we lose it like Democrats, we're not going to bang chairs, we're not going to assault anybody. We'll accept and congratulate that individual and wish that individual the best and encourage those people to focus in the service of people. That's how Democrats are supposed to operate. And that's what I wish Africa should understand, that democracy is about choices, and people have to live with the choices they make.
And to think that you would have been that individual this evening, perhaps speaking to you now, donning a mayoral chain, if you had ensured that when the acting city manager's a term, 3-month term was up, it was properly renewed, because you were the mayor at the time. Should you not have done that and avoided the drama that we saw this morning?
There are no legal basis. Even if it was like that, they might have tried another trick. Last year they've done it with the same matter. When it was Mr. Trolley, it didn't even take 30 minutes for them to bring in somebody to preside over the meeting. It's just interference. It's political tricks that the ANC were getting used to, that they do not want a democracy, and they do not understand the meaning of democracy. Vuyo, it's the character and nature of liberation movement. That liberation movements, when they reach the stage of losing power, will never accept losing power in any state.
Okay.
Therefore, whether or not a meeting continued, there is a meeting on Monday, a leadership will be elected. If I'm not elected, with honor, will allow the one who's elected to take responsibility, because it's democracy, and that's what we need to respect. The positions we hold do not belong to us, they belong to the Constitution. And we must always be honorable to respect that kind of a constitution when it's practiced. But however, the ANC as a liberation movement suffers like any other African liberation movement that rejects to lose power. That's how they break states, and that's how they will break local government, and that's how they will break South Africa. But as a DA, we'll continue to defend these institutions and give them the dignity. That's why when they said the meeting, we said it far, knowing that they're negotiating with everybody. Their negotiations are not based on principle. It's just making numbers. As long as they are in a position of power, they are prepared to get into a relationship with anybody. They don't look at the consequences, but consequences are long term. It might affect them and affect the people of the city. We'll monitor them. We'll challenge them.
We're going to leave it there. Nqaba Bhanga is, of course, the DA's candidate mayor for Nelson Mandela Bay. They seem to have managed to get many of the parties, the small parties there, to be on their side. And from the little groundwork I did this afternoon, it would seem that the one or two that they were hoping to get this afternoon, those two have been brought on board, which leaves the ANC with a slim chance of winning many, or if not most of them, over. But then you don't know. A day, they say, is a very long time in politics. We don't know what the ANC may do over the next few days leading up to Monday. But as things stand, a DA-led grouping looks set to rule Nelson Mandela Bay. Let's see if our political analyst Nqaba Bhanga agrees with me on this one. Mr. Bhanga, good evening. You heard what Nqaba Bhanga had to say. You saw the drama this morning, and looking at the numbers, your AIMs, your DOPs, your ACDPs, your FF pluses seem to be keen to go with the DA. I'm told this afternoon that there were last-ditch efforts to get good as well, to be part of that grouping that also include the UDM and the AIC. So as things stand, you know, the DA and its partners look like they have the upper hand. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Vuyo and your viewers. Thanks for having me this evening. Well, I think that's a correct reading of the situation as at this afternoon, and that's an important qualification in politics. A week can be very long. Yesterday, the IFP were saying they are not going to get into a coalition with the ANC. Today, they've changed tune. And I think that pragmatic politics are going to influence issues here. But without moving away from your question, Vuyo, in Nelson Mandela Bay, it looks like there's a coalition. It looks like the DA is leading here. What's interesting, though, is that the parties are excited about the reprieve they are getting now, which is momentary, on the basis of the nature of relationships that are supporting the coalition. And I think that they are very stuck and fixated on zero-sum politics. And so what they are doing currently is they are sealing the future of Nelson Mandela Bay on as a city that's going to be governed by more than one coalition in this coming 5 years. It's just common sense. It happens that among those relationships among political parties, at some stage the bargaining gets to be too much, and then the next grouping offers a different some different incentives for those in a coalition, and another group takes over. So my view is that while the parties may be excited about the prospect of constituting a coalition, the perpetuation of the zero-sum politics of some winners and some losers is going to seal the fate of instability here, whereas there is a different approach that could be undertaken.
And it's for partly that reason that I was asking Nqaba Bhanga earlier about how he or they have approached things in Nelson Mandela Bay, as opposed to, for instance, how his colleagues elsewhere are approaching this. And we know for a fact, of course, they've said as much, the national leadership of the DA, that is, that they are in charge of the process. John Steenhuisen, Helen Zille are actually leading this process. And from what those who have come before Nqaba have told me, that is often where the problem starts, because while at local level they are able to negotiate things, find one another with the other small political parties, how their national leadership then comes to impose themselves and their will on the locals is what often becomes a problem, which could well mean that right now Nqaba and them may have taken things to the point where they are now, but tomorrow, as soon as they begin to actually run things, they have to do the actual work, and that's when the problem starts, which then leads to exactly what you've just said.
Absolutely. So I've said this point that subnational politics are different in the sense that these politicians have got experience working across the political divide, and their relationships are a lot warmer than the transaction-based relationships at a national level, to the extent that they should be given some space to also lead from the bottom up. And it doesn't mean that they have complete autonomy, because South African political parties are national systems, right, which have got pull and push factors from both levels, national, provincial, and local. But the DA would be strongly mistaken if they thought that their part success here or apparent success here was devoid of the personal attributes and relationships that Nqaba Bhanga has across the political divide here, and therefore how parties would be predisposed to work together a lot more, especially if you think about, for example, the Defenders of the People and Northern Alliance in the Nelson Mandela Bay coalition. So these parties have got to make room to be led from the bottom up, and it's quite interesting that national leaders are often overbearing, and in fact their idealistic politics sometimes stands in the way of pragmatic agreements being reached at the local level.
Nqaba Bhanga, thank you very much for your time this evening. We're going to leave it there for now. And up next, we speak to voices that refused to be silenced by the focus on the coronavirus pandemic. With 13 days to go to International AIDS Day, we'll speak to some of those voices. Well, from the time the coronavirus pandemic hit us early last year, everything else, was pushed out, including, a focus on such programs as TB, HIV, and AIDS. They became forgotten struggles. Now, as South Africa and the rest of the world build up to International AIDS Day, which is December 1, we continue to bring you some of those voices. Yesterday, we brought to you the CEO of the South African National AIDS Council, and tonight we bring you Treatment Action Campaign Chairperson Sibongile Tshabalala and Professor Helen Risso, who is also the Deputy Chairperson of the Gauteng Provincial AIDS Council, proudly living with HIV. Good evening to both of you, and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Vuyo, and thank you for having us.
Thank you. Sibongile, in the past, 5-6 months, we've been speaking to people from your organization and others. If I recall, off the top of my head, there have been no less than 3 reports done, I think, in the Northwest, here in Gauteng and Mpumalanga, if I'm not mistaken. And all of them pointing to one thing, that during this period of the coronavirus pandemic, there has been a neglect, of, people living with HIV, people going to hospitals, not getting their medicines, not getting the attention of the authorities and medical personnel there. How would you describe the situation right now?
Vuyo, the situation is still the same. Although we're now starting to see government or officials starting to talk about HIV, because we are heading to World AIDS Day, and also we know that there is ICASA conference that is coming to South Africa early December. But that, as people living with HIV, it doesn't excite us because it's just the media coverage. On the ground, people are still suffering, and we are still facing so many challenges that we've been talking about even before we were challenged by coronavirus. So the situation is still the same, and we are tired as people living with HIV just to see lip service or doing things by the government just for the sake of being on TV or media coverage. We want real services on the ground. As we are saying that, we've been launching so many reports on the ground. All these reports that we are launching, starting from the Northwest, Mpumalanga, Free State, Limpopo, KZN, which it was launched last week, it shows that there are still challenges on the ground. And when we are talking about 95 targets of UNAIDS, we are far from reaching those targets because we have so many challenges on the ground in terms of our healthcare system, in terms of services provided to people living with HIV. So we have so many challenges that we still have to deal with. So as people living with HIV, we are not satisfied with the services that we are getting on the ground.
Professor Riss, what have you been seeing from your vantage point?
Well, I think just to back up what Sibongile has said, is that, of course, there was a massive effect from COVID. People were reluctant to go to services, people were reluctant to go and test, and people who were on treatment, in many cases, discontinued treatment, but just because of access questions. I think that is beginning to change. Fortunately, one of the strategies that the country had adopted was to have a differentiated model of care, which means that for those people who were happy and able to do it, they were able to collect their pills from these special boxes that are designed to do so. And that avoids these long queues in clinics and time off work. So I think that was actually an important protector, at least to some extent. But there's no doubt that we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we find everybody who was on treatment and that we start testing again to the levels that we need to test, so that we identify those people we haven't yet identified who are living with HIV.
Sibongile, I know that, as you released the various reports you were talking about in the provinces you mentioned, you were able to engage with provincial health authorities, but also with your health MECs and so on. What has been their response?
Vuyo, the unfortunate part is that some or most of the MECs and HODs from the Department of Health are, as much as we are giving them this report, they are acknowledging them, but we are seeing less improvement on the ground in terms of picking up services on the issues that we have identified. I think you will remember that in the past few months, I think 2 months ago, we were sleeping outside the offices of the Department of Health, of the Prima's office in Gauteng, because of the challenges that we are facing on the ground. And even after we have launched the first report in Gauteng last year, December, there is less improvement in terms of healthcare services. Instead, in other facilities, we have seen issues going from bad to worse, and we are really not happy. But other MECs or other departments or governments, at least they are responding and they are committing to say they are going to try to make things better, especially where we have identified challenges. I can talk about, like, for instance, Northwest. They have responded positively to our report, and we are still engaging them in how we are going to improve services. Also, the National Department of Health, fortunately, they are responding positively on our call to improve services, but we know that they have limited powers in terms of the service delivery on provinces. But we have seen arrogancy from other provinces like Limpopo, where we were turned down on the last day where the Department of Health was supposed to come and listen to the report. KZN, they came and listened to the report, but the response, as much as they acknowledged the report, but they never committed on any service delivery. But we are still hoping to engage with the KZN and other provinces in terms of service delivery, especially to people living with HIV.
Professor, yesterday addressing or giving an opening address at the SANAC Interministerial committee meeting, the deputy president, who is the chairperson of SANAC, was asking them to really step up their game, and was also talking about, went back to those statistics that were released over a week ago that show that more than 34,000 teenage girls gave birth last year, and 688 of them were younger than 10. Shocking statistics, he said, and making a case, I suppose, for the government in particular, or for the agent, the people who are speaking to really step up. What, in your view, needs to be done, and how do we, capitalize on the fact that over the next 13 days at least, there will be or should be a focus on TB, HIV and AIDS?
Yes, I think that these figures are extremely worrying, and what we're seeing is a sort of combination of events. For many of these young girls, they were not able to go to school, and not being able to go to school, sexual activity might well have changed, and that's one of the reasons why we might well be seeing these higher rates of pregnancy. We also would need to be worried in terms of HIV, because we also know that rates of gender-based violence increased in households during the lockdown periods. So putting all of that together, this is indeed a very big concern, and we need to think about the sexual and reproductive health needs of particularly young women at this time. Can they access contraception? Have we seen a significant change in sexual behavior, perhaps younger age of first sex during this lockdown period, because behaviors did change? So these will be some of the things we need to explore. But in terms of other interventions, we shouldn't also forget that we have programs now across the country offering pre-exposure prophylaxis, and these are drugs that that can be used to prevent HIV infection. So again, if we're thinking that our young women, and many of them are age of 15 on average, are sexually active, but clearly many are becoming sexually active at a younger age, how do we get contraception out to them? How do we offer them pre-exposure prophylaxis? And how do we get education out to them? And how do we give them a voice if they are subject to abuse? So these are, we were thinking about this before COVID. We had to put a lot of this on the back burner because, people were so distracted, but we have to now refocus and think about this again.
Sibongile, quick last word from you. The Deputy President yesterday mentioned the fact that, there's diminishing resources exacerbated by the pandemic. On the one hand, he was making a case for better collaboration, but on the other hand, also talking about how creative some of us will creative and proactive some of us will have to be going forward.
Yes, we need to be creative, we need to be proactive, and the shocking figures that we are seeing on the ground, especially to young people, and how we respond to issues. But also we need not to forget about, if we are talking about the resources, we should not forget about the corruption that is happening. We know that there has been corruption that has been happening in the Department of Health, which also disturbed services on the ground. We know that there is money that was allocated for COVID, which it's unaccounted for. We know that we have a former minister that stole about 150 million with his friends, and we want accountability. So if we want to be proactive, we want to be to overcome all the challenges that we have, and we need resources. People need to stop stealing from the public place, and they need to understand that people on the ground, they need these services, and we need a political will. We need, when we are saying collaboration, we mean real collaboration, not just this collaboration where we will sit in boardrooms and at the end of the day, no action it's been taken, or we have commitments at the end of the day, there is no implementation. So implementation goes with commitment and political will. We are willing to work with government, and we've been willing for a very long time. Even now, we are willing as treatment action campaign or as people living with HIV sector, but we can't stand corruption that is happening on the in the government sector, and at the end of the day, it affects us people on the ground.
Thank you very much to both of you for your time and insights this evening. Treatment Action Campaign Chairperson Sibongile Tshabalala and Professor Helen Rees, who is also Deputy Chairperson of the Gauteng Provincial AIDS Council. And that's where we're going to leave it this evening, and we'll continue to hear from these voices over the next 13 days. So that's our show for the evening. Have a good night.